7-year-old Michael froze mid-note 20 seconds earlier. A scream had cut through the crowd, but no one else stopped. What he did next made his father go silent for the first time. The lights were hot. Michael always noticed that first, the way they pressed down from the ceiling, thick and yellow, turning the air into soup. He stood center stage at Franklin Elementary's auditorium in Gary, Indiana, microphone stand taller than his shoulder, cord taped to the floor in a loose S-curve so he wouldn't trip. His brothers moved around him in practiced steps. Jackie on the left, Tito on the right, Jermaine behind with the bass, Marlon clapping on 2 and 4. They'd rehearsed this routine 40 times in the basement. 41. If you counted the one where Marlon forgot the turn and knocked over a lamp. The auditorium smelled like floor polish and old wood. 70 people filled the folding chairs. Parents in the first 3 rows, teachers standing along the side walls, a handful of kids from other grades sitting cross-legged in the back. Not a big crowd, but it was loud, clapping off-beat, a few whistles. Someone's baby crying in the back, then going quiet, then starting again. Michael had learned to filter it out. To hear only the music and his own voice layered on top, clear and steady, hitting every note the way Joe had made him practice. Eyes forward, shoulders back, don't rush the verse, let the chorus breathe. He was halfway through the second verse of I Want You Back when he heard something else. A scream, short, sharp, not a cheer. Michael's mouth kept moving, muscle memory carrying the words, but his mind split, half of him still singing, half of him scanning the crowd. Rows 1 through 3. Left side, right side. He didn't see anything wrong. Jackie spun beside him, Tito hit a chord, Jermaine's bass line kept the rhythm steady. The song continued, but notice what happened next, because this is the moment that changed everything. The scream came again, longer this time. Strained. The kind of sound that meant something was wrong, not exciting. Michael stopped singing. The band didn't stop. Jermaine kept the bass line going. Marlon clapped on 2 and 4, and Jackie turned to look at Michael with a question in his eyes. Why'd you cut out? But Michael wasn't looking at his brothers. He was looking at row 3, left side, where a girl in a yellow shirt was pressed forward against the metal folding chair in front of her, her knees buckling, her shoulders hunched, her face red and twisted. She couldn't breathe. Michael stepped off his mark. The microphone cord dragged behind him as he walked to the edge of the stage. He pointed. Stop. Nobody heard him. The drums were too loud, and the crowd was clapping along, and the baby in the back had started crying again. Stop. The drummer's sticks hit one more time, then hesitated. The bass cut out. Jackie's guitar rang into silence, the last chord hanging in the air for 2 seconds before it faded. The auditorium went quiet in pieces, first the band, then the crowd, then the baby in the back. 70 people turned to look at a 7-year-old boy standing at the edge of the stage, one arm extended, pointing into the third row. Joe Jackson stood at stage left, arms crossed, jaw tight. His face was stone, but his eyes were moving, from Michael to the crowd to the girl in yellow. Michael could feel the weight of that look. It was the same look Joe gave when someone missed a step in rehearsal, or sang flat, or forgot a cue. The look that said, "You just made a mistake, and we'll talk about it later." But Michael didn't move. He kept pointing. She's stuck. 2 teachers in the third row turned. One of them, a woman in a green cardigan, saw it immediately. The girl's legs were caught between the folding chair and the metal support bar beneath it. When the crowd had leaned forward during the last chorus, pressure from behind had pushed her down, and the chair's hinge had folded in on itself, trapping her knees in the gap. She wasn't hurt, yet, but she was bent in half, and every time someone behind her shifted weight, the bar pressed harder against her shins. The teacher in the green cardigan crouched down, lifted the chair's back support, and pulled the metal bar free. The girl gasped, a deep, shuddering inhale, and then started crying. Not from pain, but from the shock of not being able to move, of not being able to get air into her lungs the way she needed. Her mother rushed over from 2 rows back. The teacher checked the girl's legs, running her hands over the shins, pressing gently on the knees. No bruises, no cuts, just red pressure marks that would fade in an hour. But the girl kept crying, and her mother held her, and the auditorium stayed quiet. 70 people watched a 7-year-old boy standing at the edge of the stage, still pointing, while his father stood 10 feet away, saying nothing. Michael lowered his hand. He looked at Joe. Joe looked back. No yelling. No sharp gesture. No movement at all. Just a single nod, slow, deliberate, almost invisible unless you were watching for it. Wait. Because what happened next wouldn't make sense for another 15 years. Michael walked back to his mark. Picked up the microphone. Adjusted the stand. The band started again. Same song, second verse, as if nothing had happened. But something had. In the front row, a teacher leaned over and whispered to another. That kid saw it before we did. The second teacher nodded. Before anyone did. That night, backstage, which was really just a storage room with a broken desk, a rack of donated costumes that smelled like mothballs, and a single exposed bulb hanging from the ceiling, Michael sat on a folding chair while his brothers packed up cables. Tito coiled the guitar cord in neat loops. Jackie wiped down his strings with a rag. Jermaine stacked amps in the corner, moving slow because the wheels were rusted and one of them squeaked. Joe stood near the door, arms still crossed, eyes fixed on the hallway. Waiting for something, or deciding something. Michael couldn't tell which. Jermaine broke the silence first. Why'd you stop? Michael didn't look up. His hands rested on his knees, fingers tapping a rhythm nobody else could hear. She couldn't breathe. How'd you know? I heard her. Jackie zipped a guitar case shut, metal teeth clicking into place. We all heard the crowd. It was loud. Not the crowd, Michael said quietly. Her. Marlon, sitting on the floor near the door, looked up. What did it sound like? Michael thought about it. Different, like when you hold your breath underwater too long and you come up and gasp. But she couldn't gasp. She was stuck. The room went quiet again. Not awkward, just still. The kind of stillness that comes when people are thinking the same thing but nobody wants to say it out loud. Joe turned, his arms uncrossed. He looked at Michael, not the hard look, not the you messed up look, but something else. Something Michael had never seen before. You see her face? Joe asked. Michael nodded. What did it look like? Scared. Joe's jaw tightened, then relaxed. He didn't say anything for 3 seconds. Then 5. Then he walked out into the hallway, shoes echoing on linoleum, and the door swung shut behind him. Tito nudged Michael's shoulder. You made Dad stop yelling. That's new. Michael didn't smile. He was still thinking about the girl's face, the way it had gone from red to white in the 2 seconds before the teacher lifted the chair. The way her eyes had darted left, right, down, looking for someone to help, and finding no one until Michael pointed. He didn't know what would have happened if he'd waited another 10 seconds. Maybe nothing. Maybe the teacher would have noticed on her own. Maybe the girl would have shifted just enough to free herself, or maybe she wouldn't have. Michael decided he didn't want to find out. Not then. Not ever. He made a quiet promise to himself, sitting in that storage room with the squeaky amp wheel and the mothball smell. If he heard that sound again, that scared, can't breathe sound, he wouldn't wait to see if someone else noticed. He'd just stop. 3 weeks later, Jackson 5 played a teen club in Hammond, Indiana. Bigger room, louder crowd. 120 people packed in tight. Michael stood in the same center position, same microphone height, same choreography. Second song in, he heard it again. A different scream, same tone. Fear, not excitement. This time he didn't wait to see if it happened twice. He stopped mid-word, raised his hand, the same gesture he'd used at Franklin Elementary, and the band cut out in under 2 seconds. Jermaine had learned the signal. So had the drummer, a local hire who'd been told before the set, if the kid raises his hand, you stop. No questions. The crowd noise dropped, confused murmurs rippling through the room. What happened? Why'd they stop? Is this part of the act? Michael scanned the back of the room. A boy, maybe 14, was on the ground near the right speaker. He'd tripped over a thick speaker cable and knocked a monitor off a low table. It had missed his head by inches. 2 security volunteers pulled him up. No injuries, just shaken. But the cable was still there, stretched across the floor. And the monitor was back on the table, wobbling on a cracked rubber foot. Michael pointed at the stage manager, a woman with a clipboard standing near the left curtain. She walked over. Michael leaned down, spoke loud enough to be heard over the crowd noise. "That cable. Someone's gonna trip again." She looked, nodded, waved over a crew guy. The cable got taped down. The monitor got moved to a higher shelf. 2 minutes, start to finish. The show continued. Joe didn't nod that time. But he didn't yell either. And when they got back to the car, an old Buick that smelled like vinyl and motor oil, Joe sat in the driver's seat for a full minute before starting the engine, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. Then he said, "You got good instincts." That was it. 4 words. But Michael heard what they meant. Keep doing it. And in that moment, sitting in the dark car with the engine ticking as it cooled, Michael understood something. His father had seen the same things he had. The stuck chair. The cable. The panic in people's eyes. Joe had just never known what to do about it mid-show. But now his son did. And here's what you need to understand. This wasn't just about one kid paying attention. This was the beginning of something bigger. By age 9, Michael had stopped 4 shows, by 11, 7. Each time, someone in the crowd had been in a situation they couldn't get out of on their own. A stuck chair, a tripped cable, a broken barricade support, a child separated from a parent in a surge. Each time, Michael heard something no one else did, or saw something no one else noticed, or felt a shift in the crowd's rhythm that didn't match the music. And each time, he stopped. The band learned to trust it. Joe stopped questioning it. Venue managers started asking, before each show, "Does the kid need anything?" They meant safety checks. Michael always said yes. At 12, during a sound check at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, Michael walked the perimeter of the stage and counted the exits. 2 on the left, 2 on the right, 1 in the back. He tested each door. The back one was locked. He found the stage manager. "Back exits locked." The manager shrugged. "Fire code. Stays locked till emergency." "What if there's an emergency?" "Then we unlock it." "Where's the key?" The manager didn't know. Michael told Joe. Joe told the venue owner. The owner argued. Michael waited. Eventually, the decision came down. Back door stays unlocked during the show. Security posted inside to prevent unauthorized entry. No emergency happened that night. But 3 months later, at a different venue in a different city, a small electrical fire broke out backstage during another group's performance. The back exit was locked. 3 people were treated for smoke inhalation. Michael read about it in a newspaper clipping his mother saved. He didn't say anything. But the next show, he checked every exit again. Look closely at what's happening here, because this pattern would save lives decades later. At 15, Michael was asked in a radio interview, "You've stopped shows before." "Why?" He thought for a moment. "Because if I don't, who will?" The interviewer laughed, thinking it was a joke. Michael didn't laugh. "People come to have a good time," he said. "They trust you to keep them safe. That's not just the venue's job. It's yours too." The interview aired once and was mostly forgotten. But the idea didn't leave Michael. It became the baseline for every tour rider, every production meeting, every pre-show walkthrough for the rest of his career. Decades later, when he stood on stages in front of 50,000, 70,000, 100,000 people, the instinct that had started at age 7 in a school auditorium in Gary, Indiana, never left. One look. One breath. One decision. If something's wrong, stop. Don't wait. Don't ask permission. Just stop. Notice how it all traces back to one moment. One scream. One choice. One 7-year-old who refused to ignore what he heard. Because 20 years earlier, a 7-year-old boy had heard a scream no one else noticed, and made a choice that became a principle. The show matters, but the people matter more. And that principle, born in a moment of silence in front of 70 folding chairs, would one day guide decisions in stadiums where a single mistake could cost lives. Michael never forgot the girl in the yellow shirt. He never knew her name. But every time he raised his hand to stop a show, he thought of her face, the relief in her eyes when the chair lifted and air came back into her lungs. That memory became a promise. And he kept it.